Luke thought helping a stranded woman change a tire was just the right thing to do. He had no idea who she was, or that the next morning, 300 bikers would be waiting outside his garage. What happened next changed everything. The fluorescent lights in Parker's garage flickered as Luke wiped grease from his hands, leaving dark streaks across the rag that had seen better days. It was past 8 on a Sunday evening, and the silence felt heavier than usual. His father, Tom, sat at the cluttered desk in the corner, surrounded by stacks of invoices that seemed to multiply each week. "We can't keep going like this," Tom muttered, more to himself than to Luke. The calculator in his hand had become an instrument of bad news. 3 months behind on the property lease. The parts supplier threatening to cut them off. And Rodriguez, their only certified mechanic, had walked out Friday without even collecting his final paycheck. A bad sign when someone doesn't want what they're owed. Luke knew better than to offer empty reassurance. At 17, he'd learned to read the numbers almost as well as his father. The truth was simple and brutal. They had maybe 6 weeks before the bank made decisions for them. "Let me lock up," Luke said, grabbing the keys from the hook. Tom nodded without looking up, his reading glasses reflecting the glow of the desk lamp. Luke walked through the empty bay where 4 trucks should have been sitting. The hydraulic lift in the corner had been broken for 2 months. Couldn't afford to fix it, couldn't afford not to. The concrete floor still held oil stains from busier times, ghost marks of a business that used to thrive. He was pulling the bay door chain when headlights cut across the gravel lot. The sedan that rolled in looked like it had survived on prayers and duct tape. Primer patches covered the faded blue paint, and it leaned heavy to one side. The engine coughed twice before dying. An elderly woman emerged slowly from the driver's seat, steadying herself against the door frame. "I'm sorry to bother you so late," she called out, her voice carrying the kind of weariness that comes from more than just a long drive. "I've got a flat and my phone's dead. I saw your lights." Luke felt his father appear behind him, saw the calculation happening. How much time, how much they could charge, whether it was worth it. But Luke was already walking toward her. "No bother at all, ma'am. Let's take a look." The tire wasn't just flat, it was shredded, probably been riding on the rim for the last mile. Luke crouched beside it while the woman stood nearby, arms wrapped around herself despite the warm evening. She wore a faded denim jacket and worn boots, the kind of clothing that spoke of a practical life, not a wealthy one. "You been driving far?" Luke asked, rolling the jack into position. "Couple hours. Was heading back from my son's place." Her voice caught slightly. "Haven't seen him in a while." Luke didn't press for details. He'd learned that people told you what they needed to tell you, nothing more. He worked efficiently, muscle memory guiding his hands even as his mind wandered to the bills on his father's desk. Tom emerged from the office with a bottle of water and a folding stool. "Here you go. Might as well sit while he works." The gesture surprised Luke. His father had been worn down by worry lately, sharp edges where kindness used to be. But maybe some habits ran too deep to break. Luke found a spare tire in their inventory. Not new, but good enough. It would cost them $40 they didn't have, but leaving her stranded wasn't an option that occurred to him. He mounted it carefully, tightening each lug nut in the star pattern his father had taught him years ago. 15 minutes later, he stood and wiped his hands again. "That should get you home safe. Take it easy on the turns." The woman reached for her purse. "What do I owe you?" "Nothing," Luke said before his father could answer. Tom's jaw tightened, but he stayed quiet. "Just get home safe, all right?" She studied Luke for a long moment, her eyes reflecting something he couldn't quite read. Not gratitude exactly, something deeper, older. Recognition, maybe. "What's your name, son?" "Luke. Luke Parker." She nodded slowly, as if committing it to memory. "Thank you, Luke Parker. You've got your father's heart." She drove off carefully, the replacement tire holding steady. Luke and Tom watched the taillights disappear down the dark road. "That was $40, Tom said quietly. "I know. We needed that $40. I know that too." Tom sighed, but his hand landed on Luke's shoulder, brief, firm. "Your mother would have done the same thing. Come on, let's go home." Luke locked up the garage, pocketing the keys. The weight of them felt different somehow, though he couldn't say why. Above them, stars pierced through the darkness, indifferent to small struggles in small towns. He had no idea that by morning, everything would change. Luke's alarm went off at 5:30, same as always. He dressed in the dark, pulled on his work boots, and grabbed the thermos of coffee his father had left on the counter. Monday mornings meant getting the shop open early. Not that they had appointments, but Tom believed in keeping routines even when business didn't demand it. The drive took 12 minutes through empty streets. Dawn was just starting to break, painting the sky in shades of gray and pale orange. Luke turned onto the access road leading to the garage and immediately felt something wrong. The road was lined with motorcycles. Not just a few, dozens. Chrome catching the early light, machines parked in perfect formation on both sides of the street. His heart kicked hard against his ribs. Luke had grown up hearing stories, biker gangs rolling through small towns, the kind of trouble that made people lock their doors. He pulled into the lot and stopped cold. The entire property was surrounded. Easily 300 motorcycles, maybe more, packed into every available space. Men and women in leather vests stood in organized clusters, arms crossed, watching. Not talking, just waiting. Luke's hands tightened on the steering wheel. His first instinct was to reverse, call his father, maybe call the police. But something held him in place, the way they stood, the discipline in their formation. This wasn't chaos. This was something else. He killed the engine and stepped out slowly, leaving his keys in the ignition in case he needed to run. A man separated from the group and walked toward him. Broad shoulders, salt and pepper beard, arms covered in ink. The vest he wore carried patches Luke didn't recognize, but the bearing was unmistakable, military, command presence, the kind of man who'd led troops through hell and brought them home. Luke Parker. The voice was gravelly but not hostile. Yeah, that's me. The man extended his hand. Clint Hummer. I think you met my mother last night. Luke's brain stuttered, trying to connect the elderly woman with the flat tire to this gathering of leather and chrome. The handshake was firm, measuring. Your mother? Is she okay? The tire held up all right? Something shifted in Clint's expression. Not quite a smile, but close. She made it home fine. Called me around 10. Told me what you did. He glanced back at the assembled riders. Word travels fast in our community. I just changed a tire. Wasn't anything special. You gave her water, place to sit, refused payment. Clint's eyes were steady, reading him the way Luke's father read engine sounds. You used your own inventory and sent her home safe. In my world, that means something. Luke noticed his father's truck pulling in. Watched Tom's face go pale as he registered the scene. Luke raised a hand. I'm okay. Don't panic. And Tom stayed in the truck, engine running. Look, I appreciate you coming by to say thanks, but we're just trying to run a business here. Don't want any trouble. Clint laughed, a short bark that carried no mockery. Trouble? Son, we're not here to bring trouble. We're here to bring business. He turned and whistled, sharp, commanding. The crowd shifted, organizing itself into something resembling a queue. I made some calls last night, Clint continued. You've got about 80 bikes need work, routine maintenance, custom jobs, a few major repairs. Cash up front. No credit, no haggling. He pulled an envelope from his vest. And this is from the brothers who couldn't make it today. Consider it a donation to keep a good shop running. Luke opened the envelope. Bills. 20s, 50s, hundreds, more money than he'd seen in months. I can't take this. You already did. My mother told me your shop's struggling. Told me your only mechanic quit. Told me you gave her $40 worth of tire when you probably needed that $40 yourself. Clint's expression hardened slightly. I'm a Marine. Served 3 tours. Know what we value? Integrity under pressure. Character when no one's watching. You showed my mother respect when you had every reason to chase profit. That earns something in our world. Tom finally approached, moving carefully, and Clint extended his hand. Mr. Parker, your boy's got honor. That's rare. He's a good kid, Tom managed, still processing the scene. He's more than that. Clint turned back to Luke. We take care of our own, and we take care of people who take care of ours. These bikes need work, and we'd rather give business to someone we trust than some corporate chain. You up for it? Luke looked at his father, saw decades of pride and stubbornness wrestling with desperation and hope. Tom gave the smallest nod. Yeah, Luke said. We're up for it. Clint's grin was genuine this time. Good. We'll space it out so you're not overwhelmed. And Luke, you ever want to learn custom work? Welding, fabrication, the real art, you let me know. I've got a shop of my own. Always looking for someone with the right attitude. The morning sun cleared the horizon as the first group of bikers rolled their machines into the bay. The sound echoed off the walls, thunder captured in steel and chrome, the sound of everything changing at once. The first week felt like drowning in a good way. Bikes rolled in every morning, Harleys, Triumphs, custom builds that looked like rolling art. Luke and his father worked 12-hour days, sometimes longer, fueled by coffee and the strange energy that comes from being suddenly necessary again. Tom hired back Rodriguez with the donation money, and the mechanic returned without complaint, as if he'd been waiting for a reason to come home. The three of them fell into a rhythm, Tom handling the trucks and heavy repairs, Rodriguez on the complicated engine work, Luke managing intake and the simpler maintenance jobs. But it was the quiet moments that mattered most. Clint showed up every few days, not always with work. Sometimes he'd just lean against the bay door, watching Luke torque down bolts or bleed brake lines, offering observations that felt more like tests than advice. "You're rushing the threads on that caliper," Clint said one afternoon, his voice casual but pointed. Luke paused, checked his work. Clint was right. He'd been moving too fast, trying to keep up with the volume. "Speed matters," Clint continued, "but precision matters more. A rush job is just a future failure. The bike remembers even if the rider doesn't." Luke redid the work, slower this time, feeling the proper seating of each component. Clint nodded and walked away without another word. 3 weeks in, Clint found Luke during a lunch break, sitting on an overturned bucket eating a sandwich that was more bread than filling. "You ever work with metal? Welding? Fabrication? Some basic stuff. My dad taught me arc welding for frame repairs. How about custom work? Exhaust systems? Tank modifications? Sissy bars?" Luke shook his head. Never had the equipment or the time to learn. Clint pulled out his phone, showed him photos. Bikes transformed from standard factory models into unique machines, each one bearing the personality of its owner. This is where the real money lives, not in oil changes and brake pads, in making something ordinary into something that turns heads. "I wouldn't know where to start. That's why you learn." Clint pocketed his phone. "My shop, Thursday nights. Bring your own gloves and safety glasses. I'll teach you everything else." Luke looked toward the office where his father was buried in paperwork, finally managing invoices that showed black ink instead of red. "I should probably help here. Your dad's got it handled now. What he needs is for you to grow, not just maintain." Clint's expression was serious. "I'm offering because I see something. Don't waste it." Thursday night, Luke drove to an industrial lot on the east side of town. Clint's shop was housed in a converted warehouse, twice the size of Parker's garage, filled with equipment that belonged in dreams. TIG welders, plasma cutters, English wheels for metal shaping, a paint booth that looked like it cost more than Luke's truck. For other bikers were there working on various projects. They nodded at Luke but didn't interrupt their focus. This was a workspace, not a social club. Clint handed Luke a welding helmet and a piece of scrap steel. "Show me what you know." Luke ran a bead, competent but unremarkable. Clint studied it under harsh light, pointing out inconsistencies in the heat pattern, places where penetration was shallow. "You've got the basics. Now forget everything and learn it right." The next 3 months became a second education. Thursday nights stretched into Friday mornings. Clint was a demanding teacher, accepting nothing less than excellence, but his methods worked. Luke learned to read metal like a language, how different alloys behaved under heat, when to push and when to let the material guide you. He started with simple projects: custom foot pegs, mirror brackets, license plate mounts. Clint connected him with suppliers, taught him the economics of materials and labor, showed him how to price work that reflected skill without gouging customers. Word spread through the biker community the way good rumors always do, quietly, through trusted channels. Luke took his first custom job in month 2, a set of drag pipes for a softail, hand-bent and ceramic-coated. The owner paid $300 and tipped another $50, then posted photos that generated 5 more inquiries. By month 3, Luke had converted a corner of Parker's garage into his own workspace. Nothing fancy. A used MIG welder. Clint helped him negotiate a metal workbench, basic hand tools, but it was his. He worked there after regular shop hours, often until midnight, losing himself in the meditation of creation. His father watched with cautious pride, saying little but occasionally appearing with coffee or a sandwich. One night, Tom stood in the doorway longer than usual, watching Luke shape a custom sissy bar from raw stock. "Your grandfather would have loved this," Tom said finally. "He always said the best mechanics are artists who work in metal instead of paint." Luke set down his hammer, turned to face his father. The fluorescent lights cast deep shadows under Tom's eyes, but something had changed there. The weight had lifted, replaced by something steadier. "We're going to make it, aren't we?" Luke asked. Tom smiled, rare and genuine. "Yeah, son, I think we are." Outside, a lone motorcycle rolled past, its engine note a reminder of how everything had changed. Luke returned to his work, the metal warm under his hands. Each strike of the hammer, a promise being kept to strangers who'd become something more. Respect wasn't given. It was built one perfect weld at a time. 6 months after the morning 300 bikers changed everything, Parker's garage had become something neither Luke nor his father could have imagined. The lot stayed full most days, a mix of trucks, bikes, and the occasional classic car whose owner had heard about the kid who did custom work that actually lasted. Luke had stopped counting the hours. School had become secondary, something he finished online between welding projects and brake jobs. His teachers didn't complain. His grades held steady, and everyone in town knew the Parker story by now. The garage that was weeks from closing had become a fixture, a destination. The custom work had taken on a life of its own. Luke's Instagram account, started reluctantly at Clint's insistence, had gained 3,000 followers. He posted photos of finished projects, never the customers, always the work. A set of Z-bars with hand-tooled leather grips. A fuel tank he'd stretched and reshaped, then painted in a fade that looked like sunset over asphalt. An entire exhaust system built from raw stainless tubing, each bend calculated for performance and aesthetics. The orders came from 3 states now. People shipped parts to him, trusted him with machines worth more than most cars. Luke had learned to manage it, a waiting list, deposits required, clear timelines. Clint had taught him that reputation was built on delivered promises, not optimistic estimates. Rodriguez had become something like an older brother, covering the shop when Luke got lost in a custom build, never complaining about the extra load. Tom hired a part-time kid named Jesse to handle the basic oil changes and tire rotations, freeing up bandwidth for the real work. But the broken hydraulic lift still sat in the corner, a reminder of limitations. They'd priced replacements, $15,000 for something decent, $25,000 for what they actually needed. The money was there now, technically, but Tom was cautious about spending. Old habits from lean times died hard. Saturday morning, Luke arrived to find Clint's truck in the lot, backed up to the bay door. Behind it sat a flatbed trailer carrying something massive under a tarp. Clint stood with a dozen other bikers, all wearing the same leather vests, all watching Luke with expressions he couldn't read. "Morning," Luke said carefully, setting down his coffee. "What's all this?" "Got something for you." Clint gestured to the trailer. 2 bikers pulled the tarp off, revealing a commercial-grade hydraulic lift, not new, but immaculate. 4-post, 12,000-pound capacity, the kind of equipment that turned a good shop into a serious operation. Luke felt his throat tighten. "Clint, I can't. You're not buying it. We're installing it." Clint's tone left no room for argument. "Called in some favors. Picked this up from a shop in Denver that was upgrading. It's got maybe 5 years of use on it. Should give you another 20. Tom emerged from the office, stopped dead when he saw the lift. His hand went to his mouth, and Luke saw his father's eyes go wet, something he hadn't seen since Mom's funeral. "Why?" Tom's voice cracked slightly. "You've already done so much." Clint walked over, stood face to face with Tom. "Your son gave my mother respect when he had every reason to worry about himself. That's not common. That's not something you teach. It's something you are." He glanced at Luke. "And then he took what I offered and didn't waste it. Showed up every Thursday for 3 months, listened more than he talked, put in the work. That's even rarer." He turned back to Tom. You raised someone with character. In my world, that's worth honoring. So here's the deal, we install this today, you feed us lunch, and we never talk about payment. You gave respect, now take it back. The installation took 4 hours. Luke watched men who probably hadn't worked construction in decades move with precision and purpose, everyone knowing their role without discussion. They bolted the lift to reinforced concrete points Tom hadn't even known existed, ran the hydraulic lines, tested the safety mechanisms 3 times. Luke worked alongside them, following instructions, learning the system. Clint walked him through the control panel, the maintenance schedule, the warning signs of hydraulic failure. This thing's going to change your capacity, Clint said. Watching the lift raise a test vehicle smoothly to full height means you can take bigger jobs, work more efficiently, means you can grow. By mid-afternoon, it was done. Tom ordered pizza, 6 large pies that disappeared in 20 minutes. The bikers ate standing up, talking about nothing important, just the easy conversation of people who'd shared work and purpose. As they prepared to leave, Clint pulled Luke aside one last time. You know why we did this? Really? Luke shook his head. Because the world's full of people who take and give nothing back. Full of people who look at an old lady with a flat tire and see an inconvenience or an opportunity to overcharge. Clint's eyes were steady. You saw a person who needed help. That simple thing. That choice you made when you were tired and broke and had every excuse not to, that ripples out further than you know. He gripped Luke's shoulder. Your father told you character shows in quiet moments when nobody's watching. But here's what he might not have said. Those moments echo. They come back. Sometimes as thunder. The bikes fired up in sequence. A symphony of controlled power. They rolled out information, disciplined and proud, leaving behind silence that felt full rather than empty. Luke stood with his father in the bay, looking at the new lift gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Tom put his arm around his son's shoulders. Your mother always said kindness was its own reward, Tom said quietly. Guess she was right, but I don't think even she imagined it could sound like this. Outside, the last rumble of motorcycles faded into distance. Luke walked to his custom workspace, ran his hand along the workbench worn smooth by months of creation. The metal there held the memory of every piece he'd shaped, every lesson Clint had taught, every choice that led to this moment. He picked up his welding helmet, felt its familiar weight. Tomorrow there'd be more work, more bikes, more chances to prove that what Clint saw in him wasn't a mistake. But tonight, he'd remember, character isn't built in spotlight moments. It's forged in the quiet, when no one's watching and nothing's guaranteed. And sometimes, if you're lucky, it comes back as thunder. Luke didn't help that woman because he thought it would pay off. He did it because it was right. And that's the lesson here. Kindness isn't a transaction. It's a ripple. What would you have done in Luke's place? Drop your thoughts below. And if this story moved you, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Embrace the Journey for more stories that remind us what really matters.